Have you ever met someone who is kind to everyone but not to themselves? They listen carefully. They support others. They always try to understand how people feel, but when it comes to themselves, everything changes. They overthink their mistakes. They replay situations in their head. They are harder on themselves than anyone else could ever be. While others move through life without questioning every detail, these people constantly reflect on what they did, what they said, and what they could have done better. Psychology suggests that this pattern is not random. People who are kind to everyone but themselves often process emotional information very differently. Most people balance how they treat others with how they treat themselves, but some individuals develop a stronger outward focus. Their attention naturally goes toward other people's needs, emotions, and reactions. In psychology, this is often connected to something called external validation. Their brain becomes used to measuring their value based on how they are perceived by others. So they learn to be kind, patient, and understanding externally, but internally, they set much higher standards. Because of this, they can easily forgive others, but struggle to forgive themselves. They can understand someone else's mistakes but overanalyze their own. Over time, this creates a quiet imbalance. They give empathy outward, but rarely direct it inward. And the more they do this, the more they begin to associate their worth with how much they can give. But here is something most people do not realize. This behavior is also closely linked to emotional awareness. People who are highly aware of emotions often feel things more deeply. They pick up on subtle emotional signals, both in others and in themselves. And because they understand emotions so well, they become very careful with how they affect other people. They think before they speak. They adjust their tone. They try not to hurt anyone. But that same awareness can turn inward in a different way. Instead of creating understanding, it can create self-criticism. The brain starts analyzing every small mistake, every decision, every outcome. And because they are used to being kind to others, they rarely question whether they deserve that same kindness. They often minimize their own needs. They push through exhaustion. They tell themselves they can handle everything alone. They may even feel guilty when they put themselves first. They may feel uncomfortable receiving the same care they freely give. But this pattern is not a weakness. It is a form of empathy that has not been fully directed toward the self. The same ability that allows them to understand others so deeply is something they have not yet learned to apply inward. And once that changes, everything changes. Because when someone begins to treat themselves with the same patience, understanding, and compassion they give to others, they stop feeling constantly drained and start feeling balanced. They begin to set boundaries. They allow themselves to rest. They stop measuring their worth only by what they give. And they realize that being kind to others should never mean being harsh with themselves. So if you have ever felt like you give everything to others, but struggle to give that same energy to yourself, it may not be a flaw. Your mind might simply be wired to care deeply, and you are just learning how to include yourself in that care.